what you've got is a drawdown of all financial assets. So the NASDAQ is down about 22% over the past year. And so NASDAQ represents tech companies and all the risk assets. But on the other hand, if you were to go and look at like the bond market and the bond portfolios, bonds are down, like the BOND index, the long bond index, it's down almost 17% in the year.
Oof.
So for 30 or 40 years, you had this 60-40 bond portfolio. And then at some point, there's part of your brain that says, I'm going to come home from the hospital and I'm going to get off this painkiller and I'm going to be in great pain for the next 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is. Since we started dealing with this issue, MicroStrategy we had a $500 million of cash, and we saw interest rates at zero, and we saw the stock market inflated in the summer of 2020, and we said, well, what are we going to invest in? And we looked around at everything. Should I buy gold? Should I buy land? Should I buy art? Should I buy some crypto asset? And what's going to happen next? So what we did is we decided to buy Bitcoin, and we bought $250 million of Bitcoin August 10th, 2020. And then around September 10th or so of 2020, we bought another $175 million of Bitcoin or something like that. And then we started buying Bitcoin more in December, and we kept buying Bitcoin. We ended up buying nearly $4 billion, $3.97 billion of Bitcoin over that time period. If you had bought the greatest of the big tech companies is Google. Google is up 41%. Apple is up 39%. Microsoft's up 22%. You might have won. Those were all better investments than the S&P. Much better than NASDAQ. Much better than gold. Not as good as Bitcoin. Not as good as MicroStrategy. We borrowed money. We borrowed $2.2 billion at a blended interest rate of like 2% or 1.8%. So we borrowed cheap money while money was cheap, and we bought Bitcoin. Now people are saying, that's stupid because Bitcoin was trading up and then it traded down. At the end of the day, if your time horizon is a decade or longer, if you can borrow the money for longer than 5 or 6 years and you can hold it through the volatility, then raising cheap money, grabbing billions of dollars at low interest, and then investing in a scarce, desirable asset that's got sort of a technology appeal and holding it for a long period of time, that's going to be a good strategy. That's why our stock is outperforming Bitcoin. That's why we're outperforming all the enterprise software companies, all the big tech companies. And the reason Bitcoin's outperforming all the other asset classes is because it's scarce, it's desirable, it's technical. No one's going to write a piece of software to make gold better. You're not going to put gold on 1 billion iPhones. Whereas Lightning is a protocol that's been rolling out lately. Square Cash App or Blocked Cash App put Lightning right into Cash App. When a government declares a war, they basically put public policy initiatives ahead of the interest of the free market. Right. So if I declare a war, I could just draft every single adult in the country, put them in the military, send them off. And if I lose the war, they're all dead. Right. What's it do to the economy? The economy crashes. Right. What's it do to the prices? The price of everything go up. If you want to create inflation, you do it a couple of ways. Either you cut the supply, or you cut the supply of the product you want to buy, or you increase the supply of the money that's available to buy it with. So if I make it illegal the road to hell is paved in good intent, right? People get into positions of power and they want to do good. And so they do good by issuing edicts, executive orders, policies, regulations, and they think that the regulations will make things better. They believe that if you enter into government and politics, you believe the political process is a way to make the world better. So what you have is political organizations, centralized organizations, getting progressively more powerful. And as they get more powerful, people do things. right? And I think if you roll the clock back to Ronald Reagan, he would say, government's the problem, government's not the solution. So let's take nuclear energy, right? The cleanest form of energy is nuclear energy. It's the cleanest, probably the safest. Nobody died at 3 Mile Island. We can't hardly trace a death from nuclear energy in the U.S. And yet we haven't built a nuclear power plant since the creation of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They didn't get there without holding an asset that had technical potential for a decade or longer. There's no get rich quick scheme. So I think that people want an easy route. If you're trying to get a quick win with no volatility, with no risk, doesn't make sense. And if you're actually trying to be successful in a hurry with volatility, that probably still won't work either. I mean, ultimately, success comes from taking a decade-long view, right? Andrew Mellon, John D. Rockefeller, Jeff Bezos, right? We forget, like, Tesla was founded 20 years ago. Like, if Emirates Airlines grounded half their fleet and decommissioned it after COVID, now they're up and running the part they didn't decommission. How is it possible that the air sector could possibly recover to the point where it was in January of 2020? If you've actually mothballed or decommissioned half the airplanes, right? I could double the price of a ticket. If I double the price of a ticket, I can tell you that the size of the airline industry is the same as it was in January 2020, right? I could declare there's no recession. But the fact is, everything costs twice as much. There's half as much of it. I think that's well said. I mean, fundamentally, money is an energy system to transfer energy over time and space, right? That's the right way to think of it. Fat is an organic battery. It's your way to transfer organic energy. If you put 20 or 30 pounds of fat on your body, you can live for 90 days, right? And if you don't eat, you die. So fat was developed over the course of millions of, 70 million mammalian years. And it's a pretty wonderful invention when you think about it. It's the reason that we didn't go extinct, or the reason you're not dead. The challenge with money is the fiat currencies that are used commonly as money, they're all broken. They all have a big hole in them. Something that's got cheaper, right? It costs a lot of money to listen to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony if the orchestra plays it in 1850, but it costs not that much to listen to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony if you're listening on your iPhone through your AirPods, right? So if I can strip the matter and the energy out of the product, I can provide that to you very cheaply. So the information content products got cheap, but steaks, right? More expensive, although there's a slight benefit. If you can manufacture 100,000 cows and I can use machines, right, then that's a deflationary thing. One thing you can't easily manufacture more of is 3 acres of beachfront property in the Hamptons. That's very difficult, right? And if you look at the cost of a Palm Beach house, they're $100 million right now. Okay, so $100 million for a house on 2 acres or 3 acres in Palm Beach. Now ask yourself the question, why isn't that getting cheaper? That thing's going up a lot. 12.5% of your wealth in 30 years, saving money under the fiat standard, under a 7% regime. Now, 7% was about the rate that the US was inflating the dollar supply. But in the developing world, in weaker countries, you would see them inflate the money supply about double that, 14%. So the half-life of their money is 5 years. The half-life of the dollar is 10 years. Most people don't even notice 10 years as half-life, except that anecdotally, if you asked anybody in the past 20 years, are you going to save your life savings in a checking account that earns 1 or 2% interest in dollars? They would tell you no. I know intuitively the cost of a college education is going to go up. The cost of a house is going to go up. I can't just save in dollars that generate 0% interest. So under the fiat standard, the money supply is expanding from 7 to 14% a year, depending on where you are, until we got to COVID. And in COVID, everything doubled. And so you started seeing a much more rapid collapse in the value of fiat currency. The US dollar expanded the money supply 15 to 20% a year.